Money got me like, pussy got me like, money got me like, money got me like, money got me like, pussy got me like,
Yeah. What's up, motherfuckers? Back at it, episode 10. Why Not Podcast. I feel like such an asshole every time I say that. I think I gotta do something about that. Yeah. What's up, bitches? This week's episode is with the powerful Shae McNamera. Shae McNamera is a mindset and performance coach based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shae and I got connected through my man Rob Acosta. Rob and I spoke briefly about him on the podcast and then probably spent another 25 minutes or so after we finished recording talking about mindset and the effect that Shae has had on his life. And after that, I knew I had to connect with a guy like Shae. Yeah, like I said, Shae is a mindset and performance coach based out of Milwaukee. He is also a former professional athlete. He played professional basketball in Germany. He's also the first ever American to play Australian rules football in Australia and be drafted. The dude's an animal. He's the ultimate winner in every sense of the word. Oh, fuck. Excuse me. Sorry. But yeah. So Shae and I got connected through Rob, like I said. And I was under the impression that Shae was here locally. And we were texting back and forth, settled on a time that we wanted to meet. And then realized that Shae was in fucking Milwaukee. So I said, fuck it, packed my bags, and drove my ass up there. Shae was gracious enough to have me sit down in his house and welcome me into his home and meet his pup. And you can hear Angus in the back chewing on his bone and kind of wrestling around a bit. So if you hear any background noise, that is what you're hearing. But yeah, man, great conversation just talking about how to overcome life's obstacles, not only life's obstacles, but your own obstacles in your mind and what you can do to get past certain things. Fucking awesome, man. Another person who, really has the same energy as Shae is Adam Meredith. Adam's been on the podcast twice now. One of my absolute best friends in the world. One of my biggest influences and mentors as well. If you get the chance, make sure you check out his podcast as well, Outside Perspective on Adam Meredith. Literally everywhere you can fucking find something to stream it off of, it's there. As always, like I said, I don't want to fucking keep y'all too long. I've already been rambling for 3.5 minutes here. So, this is episode 10, Diamond in the Rough with Shae McNamera.
money got me like, money got me like, pussy got me like,
Into more pain or, being delusional in any form,
Yep.
Hell yeah. And I also showed you this. I brought this. Maybe it gives you, we don't have to go into it, but what I do for on a performance level is whatever you want, it costs something of you. And so I made an acronym of fee. So like whatever you want, it costs a fee. And obviously since you're not, for your dreams or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve or manifest or whatever it is, you need to obviously be valuable enough to get it. So to increase your value, to be worthy of being the champion of the state wrestling tournament this weekend, the FEE acronym is focus, emotions. Well, you can read it, and then obviously I break it down, but there's a hell of a lot more to it. But this, I wanted to share this with you because this has been giving me great results with all different kind of clients, whether they're just a high school student or obviously an athlete. Clearly, Rob does this, and it really helps him, to say the least, or it did. And then obviously entrepreneurs or parents or whatever. Essentially, it's just making sure that you're understanding all the areas that affect your performance, that there's a specific reason of the correlation. So we can touch on that if you want. But
yeah, absolutely, because we just got all of that. Too.
Oh, cool. Sounds good.
That was
Sounds
perfect
good.
timing.
Yeah, awesome,
Perfect
man.
timing.
That was a good interlude, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. That was perfect intro. So let's try out. Just make sure sound all right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Am I pretty loud? You need me to turn it down?
Yeah, you're good.
Good to go.
Everything's great.
Awesome. Hell yeah. Shae McNamera. Sorry, I say that correct?
Yeah, McNamera.
McNamera.
Yeah.
Shae McNamera, man. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Thank you.
Driving all the...
I know. I'm very impressed with your willingness to do what it takes. And that's exactly what the whole point of the fee is. Like, everybody talks a good game, but are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to drive? All those things are really glorifications of things we become kind of delusional to, in the sense that it's like, I don't have to actually do that, do I really? And then you realize that you actually have to do that in order for like this to work in this way, in this how. And that's where obviously people lose sight of actually the reason why they're getting the results that they're getting.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So credit to you, brother.
I appreciate. Hey, credit to you for being so fast to me.
No, it's been awesome. So essentially, it's like you pay your dues to build credit. Like you have to. If you have a dream, you're in debt to it. Think about it. For you to be on the path to your dream, what I call path to brilliance, you are literally in debt to it. And in order for you to get out of debt, i.e., have it as your own, you have to literally build credit. And every single day, you got to pay. You got to pay up. You got to pay up. So it's just a beautiful acronym that kind of sets the tone for making sure that everyone compartmentalizes all the reasons why you get the results you get. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely pretty cool. All right, so for those people who are, I'm gonna have to turn this down just a little bit. For those people listening, this will be episode 10 of the Why Not podcast.
Nice.
I'm with Shae McNamara.
Perfect 10.
Perfect 10, baby. Absolutely. Starting off solid.
Yeah.
So Shae, why don't you tell everybody a little bit of your background and what you do now, and then we can kind of get into how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, 100%. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and actually I was born in Chicago. Mom and dad divorced at a young age, so I had an upbringing of I wouldn't say dysfunctional, but I would say definitely not in the rosy ceremony of having two parents living as one. But why I share that is because it really influenced my upbringing, to say the least. And being in a culture that I was brought up in was of that rosy picket fence of the two parents and
that Midwestern mentality.
Correct, and the whole Christianity of the Catholic, diocese of everything of that nature. So I had a real duality, and from a young age, I realized that things aren't always what they're supposed to be or made up to be, and it's totally okay. It's just a matter of how you approach it. And as much as I lived in scarcity, just in the mere fact of not having a household of that, opposed to my friends who were abundantly, in that love and, support of two parents, I realized that I'm still very blessed, and I still have all of the things that equip me to be the best person I can be, even though there might be some dysfunction. But if we're being honest, everyone has some form of dysfunction, whether they understand it or not, in the upbringing. So I just share that, just kind of set the tone a little bit, because it always it basically set the tone for me to realize that there's a lot of pain in the world, and it's what you make of the pain that is going to determine how you go about your business on a daily basis as a human being, and then on your missions of whatever you're responsible for. And so that's kind of what brought me to my reasoning of always want to give back, and that's why I became a coach. And from a young age, I kid you not, it was very apparent that was my purpose in life, to obviously honor my athleticism and my blessings. I was very blessed in that sense, but on a soul level, it was to give back and to help people in some form. And obviously we all have to help somebody in order to get the exchange of energy of money, but but mine was on a deeper level. I just always knew that, and so I'm essentially been living my dream and living my wish and my desire, to say the least. It's just the matter of was it to scale, or was it to the manifestation of when it was supposed to be at like age 25 versus 22 versus 18 versus 33 that I'm at now.
Right.
That's obviously a little bit different, but the point that I'm making is that I always had a vision that I was going to serve people on their journey, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing as a coach, and why I'm focusing more on performance and mindset. But there's a lot of healing that comes along with the mindset in order for you to be mentally tough. So that's pretty much the gist of on a soul level of why I do what I do now as a coach. But me as a regular kid who just doesn't understand all the soul's perspective versus the ego's perspective, it was me like, okay, I'm really good at sports. I love competing. I love everything that it gives me. And I also could see the world and get a free scholarship, playing a specific sport, whatever it is. And then me being naturally so gifted athletically, along with just the coordination and the IQ, it was kind of like a natural in for me to use that as my tool, as my asset to get to one place to another on the course of life a little bit more effective and efficiently. And obviously you combine that with my work ethic that I had, and my dad always said, you have more talent in your pinky than other people do in their entire bodies athletically. That's great that you have that blessing, but what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And that kind of goes into, paying your dues. And so I prided myself on outworking everybody, even though I was the white boy that could dunk from the free throw line. I was very, very blessed, and I also earned it by outworking people, in the weight room to my skills, to all that. So that was also, a mental edge, but it also showed me that as much as I was blessed, I still earned it. And even though I didn't have to work that hard, and that's what kind of gave me that extra boost of confidence, because I'm like, man, I don't see anybody else doing what I'm doing. And if no one else is doing what I'm doing, and I'm head and shoulders naturally more talented than they are right now.
Where can I be in a few months?
Well, not only that, I already know I'm going to beat them in the short term. Even if it's neck and neck, even if they have me on edge or they beat me. It wasn't like I was undefeated, but let's put it in perspective. I always knew that I had that extra gear because I knew no one was doing that. So you add that to my natural ability, it's like
fuel to the fire.
I'm always going to technically come out a little bit more on top than otherwise, and that kind of instilled that what I now use is what's called unbreakable mindset, where of course I was insecure in certain areas, and of course I broke under pressure in certain areas that wasn't under my control as far as what I didn't know, based on the lack of understanding that my teachers and my coaches and my parents weren't equipped of knowing. But at the same time, I just knew logically, I'm like, man, if I have what it takes and I'm working this hard, imagine what it'll be if all my teammates did this, or if my whole team as a collective did this. And so I really pride myself in always being a leader, and marching to the beat of my own drum as well. So it just kind of, again, it set the tone for, on a deeper mission of my life, was to see that there's a correlation of, yes, you have blessings, but what are you going to do to honor them? And you still, doesn't mean that it's guaranteed, even though you're on paper you're the best. And I'll finish this, is that my coach, he said a great line. He says, paper don't play, players do. And learning that at age 16, 17 years old, and of course we're laughing because we're like, what the heck is that? I've never heard anything like that. But the message was clear, that you have to honor the fact that this is where you're at, maybe on paper, but at the same time, you still need to do it, because what happens if somebody is injured, much alone is not there because their grandma died or something of that nature? It's like, I don't want to be here, but you've already predestined yourself in your expectation and in your prediction that I'm going to lose because of the paper.
Right.
And so it doesn't make sense, and everyone theoretically knows this, but yet everyone does it.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter if you're a pro or you're a high school player or an elementary student or a parent or entrepreneur. It's just like we all lose sight. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing as a coach, just to try to make sense of it all, make it very elementary, so people just plug in their answers and then shoot from the hip as far as what their natural instinct starts telling them, as far as what they're not being aware of, i.e. the shadow self, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Why don't you touch a little bit on your athletic background and career? I mean, very few people get to be professional athletes.
Yeah.
Even fewer get to be professional athletes in two sports.
Yeah.
So you played professional basketball.
Correct.
And then Australian rules football, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So what the hell is the Australian football?
Wow. I mean, we could do a podcast on that. It's an unbelievable sport. So in high school, I played my whole upbringing, I basically was an in-sport athlete.
Right.
And it wasn't until my junior year. Prior to that, I was filtering sports out. But basically, I played varsity football as a freshman or as a sophomore. Basically was like
tight end or receiver?
I was a wide receiver. I was 6'5". I was running a sub 4.9 before I started lifting. And I was and arguably I was faster than everybody, and obviously I had hands and I had the height, and logically you just go, why would you not just play him all the time? But because of my coach's belief structure of seniority, excuse me, also, you know, doing all the other things that I probably wasn't good at as far as like blocking or whatnot. But at the same time, when we needed to play, you put me in for offense, for it to be like, all right, when he's in, you pass him the ball. So that was a fun experience, but also a humbling one, because it made me realize that even though I wasn't compartmentalizing it appropriately, I wanted me now to go back into time to go, hey Shae, you know, you're really good at this, and this, but as far as being a well-rounded wide receiver that the team needs, who is more running centric than passing centric, then you have to do what it takes, and you're not there yet. That's why you're not playing down and down. And if I would have had that perspective, I probably would have appreciated the moment and appreciated what I have and what I didn't have, and work harder in the areas that I'm not efficient in. But
back then, you're 15. Coach is crazy, man.
Yeah.
I don't understand why I'm not in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was a delusional kid, just like everyone else. But at the same time, I backed it because I was beating everybody in all the drills. So it was like, why are you not playing? This doesn't make any sense. And to my credit, it didn't make any sense. And then of course, the following year they're like, you're going to be the man. And then, of course, logically, I got bigger, stronger, and faster. It all works. But I said, you know what? My heart's not into it. And so that valuable lesson of me going, well, first of all, everyone thought I was going to be a better football player than basketball player. So let's put that out there, just because of my physical makeup and the potential that I possess. But my heart wasn't into it, and I had to make one of my probably my first big call in my life to say no to something, to say, you know what, my heart's not into it. I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm not going to disrespect myself. I'm not going to disrespect the sport. I'm not going to disrespect the team, the coaches, the school, whatever the case is. I'm not going to disrespect it. I'm going to say no. And it was very hard, and everybody did not handle it well. I mean, you go to my high school, and I'm sure I'm going to be a Hall of Famer within a couple of years or whenever they decided to pull the trigger. But one of the big things they always say is like, man, you could have been, really something special. And to my credit, I earned the opportunity to have a questionnaire from Wisconsin, but my coach was so afraid of my ego blowing up that he didn't do it. Now, potentially, if I would have had that questionnaire as a sophomore from Wisconsin, knowing that my end goal was just to get somewhere to go to college, get free scholarship, and then obviously what's the best path to play pro, things could have been differently. But it is what it is, and I'm glad it was what it was. But I'm just saying, in perspective, that was also the reason, because my sophomore year I was getting heavily recruited in basketball. So it was like...
Was basketball always your first love?
No, actually it was baseball, then soccer. And then it became basketball, and then the only reason why I got into football was because I always played up a year in soccer. And so when I was in 8th grade, when they were in high school, I was like, what am I going to do in fall? And then I was like, well, I always dominated at recess and for football. And then I'm like, I'm not going to not do something. Like I become spastic. Like, I got to get after it, and I got so much energy. And so I was like, man, what a cool opportunity to do. And then the second play, I scored 75-yard touchdown, and then I kicked the field goal, and then it was like history after that. I was like,
get used to this.
soccer's over. I love soccer. I play soccer now, but and I do it at a high level or highest amateur level here in Milwaukee, and I love the challenge. I just love it. It's just a good duality from what I experienced, and it's also not a teaser for me to like play pro-am basketball when I know logically I should be getting paid, and I chose not to do that anymore, even though I was still in my peak and still was able to, travel the world and get paid to do it. My heart wasn't into it, and it was only because I wanted to do the coaching. So to backtrack, my first big decision in my life was saying no, and it was going against everybody's wishes and desires and dreams of me being part of their path. And what made me realize on a deeper level, on a soul level, it made me realize that I need to stay true to myself, and I need to be authentically myself and honor myself and respect what I desire. And that was a big, powerful moment, because it wasn't easy. Because you're getting peer pressure. I never got peer pressure to do this, that, whatever. Theoretically, I was always there, presented, but I always said no, because I was always like, I saw how this affected my father. I saw how it affect other people. I don't want to, damage my engine, my body, my vehicle. So I always said I was always cool with that type of peer pressure. But this was a peer pressure that was from literally every level, every parents, coaches, admin, obviously scouts. People were clearly I didn't know that at the time, obviously, but I intuitively knew. I'm like, wow, who wouldn't want this kid who's running a 4.8, not even squatting or doing any weights, and he's 16 years old, and he's 6'5 plus, and he's going to be 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". That'd be a freak athlete theoretically if he were to be actually
built
training.
properly.
Correct, if I was built properly and wanting and willing to do what it took to be a football player. And that's what I realized that I wasn't, and I didn't want that, even though I would have dominated. So my first ego trip was actually quite the opposite. It was me saying no to the ego and saying yes to my heart. So that was a real powerful moment of saying no to the ego and yes to the heart. And my heart was saying, no, this isn't right, doesn't feel right, even though logically it did, because they would have had so much glory. But that was the first moment where I kind of focused more on basketball. I said, basketball is my meal ticket, and I'm all in with it. So that was a big deal in my life. But it taught me so many valuable lessons that, even just saying it now, it's becoming more evidently clear that I need to share that message. That was a big deal. When we all experience people in our lives that are telling us what to do or how to do it or why we should do it, even though they mean goodwill, it's unhealthy helpfulness versus the healthy helpfulness of going, Shae, we honor the fact that you're dominating in this sport, but you also love other sports, or which sport do you value the most? No one was asking me those questions. If they did, how empowering would that have been to see somebody who wants the best for me, but also selfishly wants something out of me, if they had that. And I can't say that was a knock on every other human that I ever interacted with during that time, but at the same time, imagine if that did happen, or imagine if there are more people like that in the high school level. And, they're not doing it for money, they're doing it just to have the glory and have the ego trip themselves and to give back in the sport that they love. And I'm not knocking them, but at the same time, if they were to be better leaders, they would realize that we have to honor and support that soul's journey of the ego's experience,
Right.
And I that's part of the reason, part of another mission on a mission of a mission of a mission that I do with my coaching, is to try to empower that in that, just to see the bigger picture. Easier said than done.
Right.
But
The responsibility of a head coach goes so much more than to just calling plays.
Goodness.
How many messages have you taken away from, whether it be a basketball coach or one of your football coaches, like you said, that still to this day affect you every single morning when you wake up?
Yeah. Well, think about this. I'll reverse this. Imagine if you didn't have. Okay. Imagine if you were not the world's greatest athlete, like basically I was. I was a top tier athlete. I was very blessed, and I honored it and did everything I could to enhance it. But what if I wasn't? And what if I was actually, really good, but I just wasn't a good fit with that team, which happens across the board from professional to obviously elementary school.
Absolutely.
And then for the lack of, compartmentalizing the situation for what it is, and the lack of maturity from the leader or the parent or both or whatever, to say you're just not a fit for this organization, this program, this team. I don't see it this way. But you can probably play and have a really good role on another team somewhere else. And obviously not everybody has the luxury of changing and transferring schools and this, that, whatever, but it literally breaks their identity in that specific sport. And then as you know, logically, it affects your self-image of who you actually are as an athlete, or you just as a person. And then that affects your self-esteem, and then that obviously affects your self-worth, because you're not seeing the value. You're only seeing what the logic, reasonable explanation of your value is to only that perspective.
Right.
So the biggest thing that I tell people is that in anything you do in life, it's always going to be both objective, hopefully, but more subjective than anything else. It's always a combination. So even though you might be the best XYZ, if you're not a right fit for this program or this institution or this business or whatever it is, you're not going to get the job, and you're not going to get that role, even though we can all say you have better numbers, you have better this, that, whatever. And I think that's the hardest thing to accept, is like, no, this doesn't make sense. Why? And then you just go into why me, and if you don't have a strong foundation, you become depressed, and then that leads to obviously potentially coping in an inappropriate way, or you just crying on the couch for an inappropriate amount of time, which obviously affects you and affects your momentum in that mission that could be really glorious.
Well, and
it's deep stuff,
and all
really
the relationships you have in your personal life.
Oh my God.
How many athletes do you run across where at any level, high school, college, professional, their sport is the center of their life and everything that they know.
It's their identity.
Yeah, it's
their only identity. And what I try to do as a human, I'm a human, but I meant on a deeper level for them to realize that they are a soul having a human experience. And if they can get to that position where they are unconditionally loving, respecting, and honoring themselves, opposed to conditionally loving, respecting, and honoring themselves, meaning I scored a goal, let's use soccer for example, I score a goal, I'm obviously feeling logically awesome. But if I don't score a goal, I had a terrible game. People have this definition, and this is obviously an elementary, definition, but the point that I'm making is if you need something to validate you, you're caught up in your ego. You're caught up in literally the validation process of saying I'm good enough or I'm not. And that is the root of all evil. If you perceive yourself only as what your current value or current worth is, you lose sight of your value in which you are growing into, knowing damn well that you've never reached your full potential in any area that affects your performance. And then on top of that, you are trying to make sense of where you stack up on your team or on your journey, or am I good enough to the next level? Or can I, say you're like for the indoor soccer conversation with Rob, you're playing indoor soccer. Indoor soccer is not the top league of soccer. Indoor soccer is the biggest indoor soccer in America and in the world, but that's only because it's indoor soccer. There's other forms of soccer. There's, there's beach soccer. There's obviously outdoor soccer. There's futsal. There's all these different things that are soccer, but in that realm, you might be the best player, which he was last year as a defender, and it was phenomenal to see him do that. It was amazing. It was so cool to be part of. But at the same time, is this what you want? Are you cool with just being the big fish in this field, or would you like to try to test yourself in other areas, or are you totally cool with just saying no? I'm built, and my game is specifically for this specific sport, and that's totally fine. Just own it. And I think most people either go, well, I'm not the world's greatest outdoor player, for example, in this indoor soccer metaphor, so I'll just stick with this. Or like in MMA, I'm really good at grappling, but I suck at boxing. Well, what do you think I'm going to be working on more? Logically, you'll be doing grappling because you go, I'm going to continue with my success and just focus on my strength. But at the same time, if you're going to honor being an MMA athlete and honor that competition, you have to be well-rounded. Otherwise, theoretically, you will be exposed eventually.
Absolutely.
And that is the point that I think people lose sight of, even though they logically understand that. It's, are you still willing to get uncomfortable? And until you see the value in which that uncomfortable leads to, you'll avoid it. You'll avoid it. Most people, when you get a problem, you have a couple options. You can either address it or you can avoid it. If you address it and you go straight to the source, then you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna heal it and you're gonna get after it. Most people don't do that logically. Why would you do that? Your brain doesn't want that. You know.
Most people run from confrontation.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation of leadership. We can go into that later. But the point that I'm making with this is you either get after it or you put a Band-Aid on it. And if you avoid it, you either are obviously coping in an appropriate way or appropriate way by distracting yourself or through substance, or you're playing victim completely and you're just basically giving up, or you're just bitching and complaining and whining and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're all guilty of all four options. It's just that if you're truly aligned with your mission, if you're truly going to pay your debt to your dream, to your wish, to your desire, you're going to have to pay the fee and you're going to have to do the uncomfortable. And that means that it's going to be, like I just said, uncomfortable. But are you willing to see the value? Can you even see the value? And maybe you do, but are you still willing to do what it takes? Like you driving 6 hours to come see me. That took courage to do. I mean, that's not an easy feat. I did that when I was working with St. Louis Sandwich, but the point that I'm making is that I saw the value and I was like, this is worth it. I don't care. I'm going to make the most of these 5-6 hours of driving. I'm going to do podcast. I'm going to do whatever I'm doing. I'm going to just enjoy my time and I'm going to do it, even though logically it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. No. None. But you know what? I did when I to jump courses of conversation. When I had the opportunity to present myself as an Australian rules football player for my first introduction of the sport with a gentleman who was connected with one of the teams that showed initial interest. I drove 6 hours to Twin Cities from Milwaukee to meet this guy, to do a workout that he was filming. And lo and behold, the guy's film wasn't recording while we were doing it.
Oh my God.
So the next day, I obviously slept over. We had a meal and we talked and we showed me, film and this is whatever.
Not your
film. And then
but...
not my, on his computer, excuse me. Sorry. Film is a general term. Yeah, sorry. You know the deal. And needless to say, I went home and I had my buddies help me film, do all the same workout the next day. And it's still on YouTube. I still will never probably turn it off. It's just Shae McNamera AFL workout. And of course, no one's looking for Shae McNamera or AFL workout. So I'm just like, I'm not even going to hide it. I'm going to send that link right over to the team. And they saw it. And I was not using an Australian rules football. I was using NFL football. Right. Oh so it's a different football to say the least. And it just makes it really awkward to say the least of how the way they kick and this, that, whatever. And anyway, it was funny, but it was like, I'm willing to do what it takes to see this out. And if I'm worthy for the opportunity, great. If I'm not, great. But I know I'm at peace with myself because I I gave myself the best chance to be fulfilled, proud, and satisfied with my what I gave. And if I'm going to be in any form of regret based on me not doing what it took to drive 6 hours or to do the film properly or to procrastinate on it, I'm obviously going to be in regret. And if I'm in regret, I'm going to be ashamed of myself, I'm going to be guilty, and or I'm going to be embarrassed by my actions. And that's basically what the gist of how I coach and how I do my mentorship, even with my best friends or any friends. It's just like, is this going to lead you into a peaceful position or a regretful position? And it's all relative, because your world is now is part of podcasts, and you have to do what it takes to be a good podcast guy. And if that means that you have to travel 6 hours to do an interview, you're going to do it. Yeah. And that's it. And if you're not willing to do it, then you're basically saying, well, that's fine. I'll just do it on the computer, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's no insult to that. It's just that you have created a standard in which you want to, give everybody the expectation of that this is a consistent, and therefore you're willing to do what it takes to make it happen in the physical.
Yeah. So, when Rob brought you up on the episode that we did, I was so pumped. I'm like, awesome. I've been looking for a guy to connect with like this. Yeah. He's right here in town. He works for the Ambush.
Yeah. Yeah, it changed a little bit, but that's part of the journey in which I had to do for my personal journey with coaching to utilize the opportunity that I had versus the team that I had with at Milwaukee Wave which it really could happen. It's just a matter of I valued my relationship with the head coach more than what was logical.
Right.
And because of that, I went down that path. And obviously I was willing to sacrifice my time and energy to obviously drive down every other weekend and get after it.
So you were driving down every other weekend?
Whenever there was a home game, yeah. And that was just me in the physical. That had nothing to do with me on the phone or the texts or the emails or me doing YouTube sessions. So what I did with that team in particular, I would do a YouTube session for 15 minutes, very very short in the realm of the workshop goes, but it was enough to just teach and educate and remind, and then have them do homework from it. So essentially what I do is I incorporate personal development. I mean, coaching now is such a big industry because people realize that school didn't teach them life stuff. And we're at the prognosis of hopefully having parents that are not traumatized in certain areas and aren't and then because
Certain
they're not
areas
as in like they don't have like mommy daddy issues, or they're projecting their insecurities or their false beliefs or their beliefs of saying you need to be a soccer player or you need to be a football player, and as opposed to you follow your heart, son. And
do what makes you happy.
Let's do what makes you happy. And so then you're automatically forcing and inflicting your will on somebody else and making them conform to you and your beliefs. And then they are automatically degrading themselves, and they know they're degrading themselves. And then they hold that resentment to themselves, and they hold that resentment to their parents, whether they consciously can articulate it or not. And then it comes and builds in specific areas of your body, which is really, that's where it gets really trippy, is that injuries and illness and disease and cancer are all related to your emotional pain. And how it is in store of specific areas of your body means specific different things. And I swear to God, every kid, every athlete, every person, every adult, entrepreneur, whoever I work with in particular, when they have something going on in their life, whether it's, like I said, illness, disease, cancer, injury, whatever, specific areas of their body will manifest specific definitions of what's going on. And in that specific area that they got injured, I always show them what the definition is and what it is universally. It's not like me saying like, oh, you must have blank. Like I literally go, this is what they say. Is this true to you? And every single person says yes. And I'm always like, golly, that scares the hell out of me, because, oh my God, this is, so you mean like, people talk about controlling your emotions, but if you get to a position where you're able to understand that your emotional pain is going to potentially or eventually manifest in some harm to you in your health and wellness, wouldn't that be enough for you to want to address the issue, opposed to procrastinate it and put a Band-Aid to it, or obviously cope inappropriately, or just play victim and deflect responsibility? Wouldn't that be enough for you to technically? But again, how much do you value it? And also, it's part of your identity to play victim or to distract, or, I'm a really good video game guy. I'm just using this as an example. I don't play video games, but if I did, it's like, okay, that's cool. It's a hobby. It's great. But if that's your out of life, for life's problems, then that technically isn't healthy. There's nothing wrong with you playing video games. There's nothing wrong with you having a drink. There's nothing wrong with you doing X, Y, Z. Theoretically, as long as it doesn't obviously harm you or someone you love. But if it's affecting you in your daily basis of attacking your mission to its utmost standard that you want to commit to. Not everybody wants to be a billionaire. Not everybody wants to be a millionaire. Some people are just cool with just having a house in the middle class society, and that's totally fine. Some people are cool with just having an apartment, and that's totally fine. Each to their own. Honor it, own it, and go forward. But if you're not meeting that standard in which you are in debt to do the daily basis of paying the dues, then whose fault is that? It doesn't matter if somebody disrespected you or not. That is that is a whole nother conversation, but it's like if somebody were to hurt you or affect you, you still have a choice to either accept continuing being in that energy field, or trying to create if you have to accept it because it's like your mom or dad and you're a little teenager or whatever, then you got to hopefully turn the other cheek to the best of your ability. Like Jesus always said, turning the other cheek wasn't just to not retaliate, it was to stay in your own frequency. Don't be in that frequency of pain that's being inflicted on you, because that's the X factor that you cannot control, theoretically, of course. But the point is that if you're able to try to change it in a healthy way, or try to change the way you respond in it, then you're doing something about it. And if it's still not going to change, even though you gave yourself the best shake at it, well, then it's time to leave. And that's where, things get really hurt, because, you're like, well, I was never taught to be in a relation. I never was told to, have a divorce. It's like, well, if you're in a position where you can't have a divorce, then you're going to compromise your integrity to what your heart's really desiring, and you're living through whose ego, whose beliefs, who conformed you to believe this way. And that's what I mean by the projections of society or parents. So again, this is why I do what I do, because at the end of the day, most people are not trying to inflict harm on other people, much alone themselves. They really mean well. It's just that they just don't know. And until I knew what I know now, I was just like everyone else. I lived through my ego. If somebody technically, metaphorically slapped me, I'd want to obviously slap them back, or I'd play victim and say this sucks and I have no control, and I, poor me. And it's like, well, yeah, it is poor you. It's disappointing that you had experienced something like that, but at the same time, what can you do differently to try to not have that happen again?
And what are you going to do to get past it?
Correct. Well, think about every time you've ever experienced anybody disrespecting you, whether you deserved it or not. That's a whole other conversation. But the point that I'm making is that if somebody is going to do something to you, whether it's loving or in a fearful way, that is something technically that you cannot control. And if you are equipped to handling that confrontation by communicating what's going on, is this really about me, much alone, or just trying to create that boundary, or understanding who to call or what resources are out there. If you don't know any of that, you will literally have to either go fight or flight, and you will do what's ever appropriate to you at that moment. And again, more times than not, it's usually in some form of unhealthiness, whether you're inflicting harm on yourself or other people, or you're venting inappropriately to your other lover, like your mom or your significant other or your best friend. And it's like, how am I hurting you guys when you're the ones that have my back through everything, through thick and thin? Why am I venting to you inappropriately? And am I guilty of it? Of course. Is everybody? Theoretically, yeah, I would imagine they would be. But it's just in the point where it's like there's so much opportunity for love and blessing, opposed to obviously fear and destruction. And it's like we need to be more equipped in that. So the personal development piece of how I try to, when I'm working with athletes or performers, that is anybody that wants to be a better performer, is trying to help them compartmentalize everything and then decompartmentalize that category so that they can make sense of it and understand where and why, where they're at and why, so that they can figure out where they want to go and then how to get there, and then just hold them to that standard. It's really that simple, but it's not, because it's so complicated.
Right.
It really is.
With free will and emotions.
Oh, exactly. And then you're dealing with bad habits. You're dealing with different wiring. You're dealing with different belief structures. I mean, certain people go, well, like, I had a client who I had to terminate the contract because they weren't willing to go forward. She was injured, and she was like, and I was like, you are injured. You should be sitting out. And the parents and her parents had such a strong belief of basically fear that you're not supposed to, you don't tell the coach that you're injured because then he'll never play you. I'm like, I don't even know where to start with you, because that's fundamentally not correct. And if that is correct, you need to get a new coach and just go to a different program, because that isn't right. Anybody that has a sensible understanding of body mechanics knows the importance of recovering and or holding on to that recovery time that might be over a couple games or a month for the betterment of that person, even though everybody wants to win. And of course, it's going to jeopardize the integrity of the structure in which that coach has been building through recruiting and this, that, whatever. But at the same time, how do you talk to somebody who's literally not willing to go forward in the appropriate way? Well, it couldn't be done. So I had to terminate it. So it was disappointing, because I was like, oh, there's just a few things that you need to shift. But if you are holding on to these beliefs that are technically incorrect and unhealthy at the same time, a double negative, it doesn't add up to a positive. So, and we're all guilty of doing that ourselves in our own life, and or being with our friends and telling misinformation. And once we find the right information, it's like, dang, You know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway, there's just, one other example I'll give you about false beliefs of just misinformation is that I was working with an athlete. We were doing coaching and basketball training. So I was combining both because I obviously know how to play basketball. I'm good at coaching at that, but it's not my deal, but I love the development and all that. Anyway, this kid, we were doing contact, and he was so afraid of contact when I had this little noodle. I had a floaty noodle, and I was slapping him, not in his mid area and not in the face, of course, but I was slapping the heck out of him.
Simulating contact down in the paint.
Correct, and it was a slap, but it wasn't a hard what a
Not what you're
real
gonna get in the
slap.
game.
Nah. It's like maybe 20% if I'm being generous. But he was flinching, he was scared, he was this, that, whatever, and I said, why are you flinching? Like, you can. I said, do this to me, and so like obviously he did to me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, and then I did to him again, and we made a laugh, and it was a joke. But then I said, what is your fear right now? And he said, I'm afraid that I'm going to break my bone, not just with this noodle, but in real life game. And I said, okay, do you know what the force is needed for you to break your bone? If from a contact or from a strike? He goes, I don't know. And I said, okay, well, let's look it up. So we Googled it, and under from my memory, it was 1,600 pounds square per inch. That's a lot of. And I said, let's go to the. And then I showed him it. And I was like, do you think that noodle or me slapping you is that much weight? And he goes, no, I don't think so. And I said, let me just show you, just for your understanding. I looked up the heaviest puncher in the boxing history, and it was like 1,300. It was like Tyson or somebody else, and it wasn't even enough. 300 pounds of that guy who's a beast, who trains to punch, is not going to break your bone. And that's when he just went kink, and he just changed his filter, he changed his belief, and then he just started attacking it. And of course, he had to get used to still, getting hit and all that.
Feeling the contact.
But there was no more fear. There's no more fear. So he had to still rewire his brain, still get used to the physical, nature of it all, and the mechanics of, doing what it took to protect. And so he still needed to learn that. Of course, it's not like, poof, he's magic, he's amazing.
But he got over the biggest hurdle.
Biggest hurdle was his filter of his fear. And I eliminated his fear based on just facts. He wasn't even delusional. It was just pure facts.
Do you see the issue of fear more in individual sport athletes than you do in team sport athletes?
Well, fear is subjective unless it's truly objective, where you're truly in hurt or whatever the case is, obviously. But no, it's funny that you say that because as I told you earlier, I got 3 guys going to state for wrestling. And wrestling for high school sports is arguably the toughest thing to do. You're cutting weight.
Wrestling's the toughest sport out of anything.
Yeah, I would think so. I truly,
mentally and physically.
Oh yeah, and you're only relying on you. And no matter if you're sick or injured, you
have to show up.
You have to show up. And even if you do have all the health and wellness going on, if your effort isn't there, you're a shell of yourself, and you're hopefully relying that guy's injured or a shell of himself because of his insecurities or because he just doesn't want to be there or he's afraid of the paper, right?
Right.
Paper doesn't play, but sometimes it does,
right.
And most of the times it does. And then, so that's a big thing that I try to teach, just to you need to honor the fact that he might be technically better than you, logically, but at the end of the day, that still doesn't mean that you have to basically tap before it even happens. So to answer your question, yes, individual sports, based on solely the fact that you cannot hide. You can't hide. Even basketball games, you just sit the bench. You're cool. Football games, you're cool. Just sit the bench. You're not good this week, sit the bench. But in an individual sport, when you have to compete because you have to keep accelerating that journey, you're done. It sucks because when you're in that position, it's really, really hard to rely on yourself when you're physically not there, or you're mentally can't be bothered, or you're afraid and insecure. It is really, really hard and scary. And to me, that's probably the biggest thing that I can say is that individual sports really accelerate your maturity, hopefully. Or it could be the opposite, honestly. I mean, I'm sure you've seen guys that just actually got even worse. And it's like, okay, well, that's really disappointing because you're missing the root of this whole journey. The whole journey is to develop you as a person, and much alone as an athlete. But Yeah, so I say individual sports purely on the basis of you not relying on anybody else, and especially wrestling. I don't know if I agree everything totally with. They try to do everything they possibly can with the weight cut, but it's still taxing. I mean, I know guys that are basically cutting 20 pounds and they're holding that 20-pound cut the whole 4 months. That is ridiculous, and their natural biomechanics is telling their body's saying we need to get bigger.
Right. Because you're trying, especially in high school, because you're trying to cut weight as the rest of your body is growing.
You're in the middle of puberty. How are you going to disrespect your body? You
Nature.
are literally disrespecting nature. Mother Nature is telling you have to get bigger, and you're like, no, I can't. And that
I got to be the biggest guy at the smallest weight class.
I know, right? That's a whole other. Yeah, because that's and it's just again, you want that advantage, and because we live in competitive nature, and because we've agreed to being competitive, we're living in scarcity, and that means that you will jeopardize your integrity to what's actually the beneficial, healthy nature of what needs to be done for you. And again, that's what you signed up for. That's what you're going to do. So you can't complain about it. And we had a kid who, this kid was going to go to state, if not win it potentially as a freshman at 106. 106, very light. He's clearly bigger than 106.
Yeah.
But he was 2 pounds, however, going into the night before, well, like classic, for people that don't understand what I'm saying, the meet was at 10 o'clock. They do their measurement of their weight at, let's just say, an hour and a half before. And what their rule is that whatever your weight is, you have to be within 3%, just off your health and wellness and basically insurance, clauses.
Do they do hydration checks in Wisconsin?
I can't answer that because that's not my responsibility, so I don't even think about it. But what I do as my responsibility is to make sure that they are on top of their diet and their hydration. But I don't go into the specifics because I'm only with them for a specific amount of time during the week, and then interact via text or email. So that's my agreement with that specific team. So I don't know that for a fact, but I'm sure they, I hope they do. Let's put it that way. So anyway, to get back to the story, the kid just couldn't take it. He just couldn't do it. And I said, you have 3 options, brother. I said, your first option is to say you're not about the life of being a wrestler, or you're just not willing to do what it takes, or you just are truly sick. So it's basically kind of 2A, 2B. You're just too sick and you can't handle it. But and I'll just say the last one is you're gonna just suck it up, and you're gonna follow up the agreement of what you signed up for, and you're gonna do what it takes. And he chose 1 and 2, and it wasn't 2B where he physically couldn't do it as far as his had to go to the hospital or anything. That wasn't the case. It was purely him being undisciplined and not willing to do what it took to eat the right things, and his parents weren't willing to
enforce it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation of parenting, but so unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's not about the parents in that position, because we have to allow the kid to, take ownership and do what's needed. And unfortunately, he chose not to do what it took to go to state by quitting. And it was the night before, and everybody knew that he was a sure
medalist.
Theoretically, let's just call it theoretically, because you can't anticipate any expectations
any given Sunday.
But yeah, correct. But theoretically, he had the easy path compared to everyone else on the team, and we had 3, and we should have had 2 more. So, it didn't sit well with all those kids who were disappointed and frustrated, and I just had to remind him. I said, this is his choice, and as much as it doesn't make sense to you, and as much as it hurts you and hurts the team and hurts the brand, this is him. This is a reflection of him. This isn't a reflection of you. This isn't a reflection of the coach. And of course, I did. I coached the coach obviously in this, and we'll have to discuss how we're going to pursue communicating the standards with him in particular, because he's going to have a much sterner standard in which needs to be met. But he's a very compassionate human who I really love working with. So I've no doubt he'll find the right wordings to do, because this is his battle. This is mine to be part of. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that because, he has to honor his choice. And unfortunately, sometimes, just like with me, my choice was more of like my heart wasn't into it, and it wasn't his heart wasn't into it. It's just he wasn't willing to handle that pressure of being disciplined, and then because of him not being disciplined, he was obviously in more pain because he was eating sugary foods, which messed up with his biochemistry of his chemical reactions in his brain, much alone his stomach, So he made things worse, opposed to just doing the right thing when we gave him the right tools and techniques to be obviously nutritional balance, but also equipped to keep that weight down and still be full. So just fascinating case study. I'm glad it happened for me in my development, but in the truth, it's gonna be the best thing for him too, whether he becomes a wrestler or not. Even though he's got a strong chance of being something special, but if he doesn't want that life, that's fine. But I just hope that he can compartmentalize it, own it, and just forgive himself and really count it as a real blessing in disguise. Even though it affected him and affected many people that love him so much.
I was going to say, I think the biggest hurdle was going to be winning back the respect and trust of his teammates, because as much as wrestling, MMA, jiu-jitsu, all of these things are individual sports, I've never been around more of a team and family atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I have to go out there and compete against somebody else. Yeah. Right. And if I'm not competing against you every single day and I'm not getting better, you're not getting better, and I can't get better to go out and do what I need to do. Right. So the bond, like I said, that I've experienced, especially being in the community now, is it's almost of like if you lose, I lose. We're all in there together. Whether, like I said, it's like the entire team is in that ring at one time.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, that's a separation. There's another deeper conversation to have is the separation of good, solid teams that are supportive versus just kind of doing their own thing. Even though we're all in this to win it and get after it. That lack of support is toxic energy, and obviously that's part of the scarcity, but also the selfishness and just kind of like whatever, I'm just doing my own thing. And even though everybody, I've been part of different teams, and most teams I get is real dysfunctional ones or the ones that just want to get better. So I get the two fronts. One is like, I'm all about whatever needs to be done. I'm willing to expose anything and everything, or just help me raise my standard to get better and teach me new things to be more equipped. Cool. Then I get the other ones who are like, this is code red. I need desperation. I need help. I'm not willing to cope. I'm not going to play victim anymore, even though I want to. And I don't want to cope anymore. I don't want to procrastinate. And I'm sick of this little Band-Aid because it keeps falling off. So,
and my job's on the line. Please help me. Please help me.
Yeah. Oh, and the fact that I try to get a scholarship, or I'm trying to get a higher paycheck, or we're just trying to win a championship, or I'm sick of being last place for the last 5 years. Whatever the case study is, those specifics I get, and I love it because it really helps me out to be a better person, but it also helps me to really reflect as a imperfect person, to see the principles in which they're doing and see how I'm doing it in my own unique way, in my own unique journey. And so being a coach is actually almost like the best personal development as well, because you try to do your best to empower the individual and then help them break free and hold them to standards and this, that, whatever, and it's fantastic. But I learned so much about myself through the case studies in which I am with, because I'm like, I'm guilty of being afraid of getting hit, or I wasn't technically always disciplined with my diet, even though on average I was better than everybody else on my team, but I was still, proportionally, I was not living my integrity to what I declared I was going to do. So stuff like that just kind of makes me go, okay, I'm actually worse than you in certain areas, and I'm actually just a percentage or a sliver of that, inappropriate, unhealthy behavior. So in reflection, it's been helping me become this almost like a superpower in my own right. And of course, I'm not polished as far as perfection yet, but I don't ever anticipate me ever being perfect, but I course correct much faster than I ever did. And just that empowerment of knowing that I can do that, and that I'm always seeking to learn more layers that are deep rooted in my subconscious, it's been an amazing journey for me as a coach, and just it's been awesome for me as a human, and I've been a better person and better lover with my wife, and my lover with my friends and my parents, and yeah, it's been great. So it's been a great journey for me as a coach. It's been truly amazing. It's personal development every day when I'm with a client or just studying or doing whatever I'm doing.
Right.
Really
Yeah,
is.
that's something I've noticed too, because I teach kids jujitsu, and I do some personal training and speed and agility training and stuff like that.
It's special, isn't it? Just to see them from point A to point B,
Yeah.
and that journey from point A to point B, and all of everything that was. Like,
It's
talk to me. Like,
to me, it's the ultimate form of self-reflection.
Oh yeah.
Because especially in this day and age, everybody is searching for instant gratification, and
Yeah, just a smidge.
yeah. That's why Instagram is filled with 9 million butthole pictures. And,
Yeah. Those models, they look great, but if that program
shuts down today,
shuts down, what are they now? What's their label? What's their identity?
What's your value to society?
Well, exactly. Now you have to go the hard route, and now you have to go post your picture and send it to Vogue or something. But I will say this: with instant gratification, you have to think. Everyone says, "Oh, the millennials are now." I get it, but think about this: they were conditioned in that environment. You are the borderline of where it was like still like, for example, I give this example all the time. I used to go to the library for school. Never liked doing it. But when I did do it, I would have to go to the old computer that was green and white or real, whatever that disgusting. Well, basically it was Packer colors, right?
Yeah.
And you'd go
Giants.
click. Yeah, okay, we're not gonna talk anyway. You do your clicks and you go, okay, this is the title. Now, where is it? Okay. Then it will maybe tell you, where in the bookshelf it is. And
Dewey Decimal System.
And you have to find it. Yeah, or you have to pull out that little shelf and you have to go through the Rolodex. And then you hope to God that book is placed in that specific order alphabetically. And if it's not, oh my God. And think about how much time that just wasted, me just articulating what I just said versus me going on my computer or going on my phone or my computer, going to it and then saying, give me the audio of it right now, download, here's $2 or $9 paid or whatever, shipped on Amazon. And then the book's gonna come to me in 2 days and I don't actually have to leave the house to go to the library to get it. Everything's fast and efficient. So it's a logic reason why people are in a specific way of going, why is this taking so long? I mean, the whole dial-up internet, I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. I mean, that in of itself is a joke, but we had to do that in order. Now we literally, you don't have Wi-Fi for free. Whatever, I'm going to this. I'm
going to Starbucks.
Yeah. And so you just kind of put it in perspective, and you go, there's a correlation in which we are conditioning our youth, and through tablets and through not socializing and not being outside and not being physically active, that we are kind of becoming like the movie WALL-E a little bit.
Absolutely.
And that was more of a potential documentary of what our society could potentially be in a couple hundred years, theoretically. And to be honest, it's kind of already happening in certain ways. I mean, health and wellness in America, Mitchell and Wisconsin, is an
epidemic.
Morbidly obese is like the new commodity. It's not obesity, it's morbid. That's the highest ratio of growth right now. That's across the board in the nation, and then obviously around the world as well, because of the foods and the inaction of physically getting after it. And I'm not for people looking like a physical specimen statue like a Greek god.
But there's no need to be unhealthy.
But that's the point. And then you can say, oh, I'm beautiful and I'm this, that, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're not healthy. And
Right.
I care about your health. And if you don't care about your health, then I have to stop caring about your health, and I need to fall back and probably fall back out of your life. And that, to me, to the people that I love, it hurts because you don't want to accept anything but the best for them. And that's where tears and pain and pressure within that you carry can really jeopardize your health and wellness, to say the least. And I've had to deal with that a couple times, not just for the obesity and this, that, whatever, but it's also for why you're choosing a specific lifestyle that's not healthy, and you complain about it. yet you don't want to do anything about it because you're afraid of, facing the, admitting that you've been guilty party of manifesting this more and more. And again, that's basically what I do as a coach, but it's only because they want to do that, and it's still tooth and nail at times.
Yeah,
and it's scary.
You can't fight free will.
It's so, you wish sometimes you're like, God damn it, get over here. And, you kind of like, hold them like a bull, and you say, you're going to go over here. And, it's not a steering wheel. And too many parents and too many people, even though they have loving intention, it's unhealthy helpfulness by joysticking the hell out of them. And then they get into a position where they're being manipulated, and then it's going against their free will, or even though I want this path, I want to confront it, I don't want to do it as fast as you want to. Because if I through my system, through what I do, theoretically I could help somebody like that. Now you still have to rewire your mind, you still need to break those habits, you still need to potentially do different things, you have to filter your kitchen, whatever the case is, You have to change your friendships, all that stuff. But as far as addressing the situation, making sense of it all, compartmentalizing, decompartmentalizing it, and then obviously taking ownership, and then being able to give yourself and that situation or that person or that event or whatever the case is love. Until you do all that, and especially the loving piece, you'll never be at peace with yourself, and you'll always be, triggered, to say the least, whenever you're around that specific whatever. Whatever. I'm being very generous.
Yeah.
I'm being very general right now. But until you bless that situation for what it was, including yourself, even though you're technically truly the victim from a predator or something of that nature, you still have responsibility for being in that environment in some form. And that's where people lose themselves, because they go, I was not a part. It's like, well, I'm all for people understanding that no one deserves to be, for instance, raped. But if you're not, even though we can't control other people and people are wrong for raping because they are quote unquote turned on because you're wearing something revealing, the honest truth is you are in a position where you're outside of your safe space, which is your home, and now you're open to potential X factors happening. Like, I have a friend who was in Mexico on their honeymoon, and a gang was starting to shoot, and they killed his wife. So you go into
on their honeymoon?
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Holy shit.
So you go into the situation and you go, this is what potentially could happen, even though the percentage rate is 0.0000001%. I signed up for it. I put myself out there. I drove today. I could have gotten in a car accident. I'm in a house right now. The ceiling could collapse. I'm signed up for it. And until you truly understand what I'm saying, and because that's where I'm basically taking everybody's V card, I'm taking the victim card away, is that wherever you step, it could be a sinkhole. This is the potential of what happens or what could be in this world. There isn't really no quote unquote safe places. And even though no one deserves to be treated in a specific way, there most likely is a little bit more responsibility, especially when it comes to human interaction, more than people want to admit. And that's a little bit too hard for certain people. And I'm all for the empowerment of having everybody hear their voice and all that. I just want people not to fall for the trap that it's always everyone else's fault, and it's not mine either. It's like, well, I'm not saying you asked for it. I'm not saying you deserved it. All I'm saying is that
you signed up for participating in life.
Exactly. And because we participated in life, we are bound to death. And whatever death that is, metaphorically or literally, it will be. And that's why it's called life, because there's a beginning and an end, and what you do in between is obviously
that dash.
Yeah, that dash is the life, and that's what makes or breaks you. And that's why I said when I'm with my athletes in particular, the high performers, is when you're done with the performance, whether you win or lose, are you at peace with yourself or are you in regret? I don't care if you win the championship and become a gold medalist or you become the first cut in a tryout. I don't care. I don't care about what your results are. All I care about is, can you look yourself in the mirror in your heart of hearts? Don't BS me. Just talk to yourself and say, I'm at peace with myself or not. Your ego is always going to be upset because you weren't good enough to be a champion, or it wasn't fast enough for you to be a champion. Like you become a champion, it's like, well, I could have pinned that guy, in two seconds opposed to 3. It's like, oh God, well, here we go to perfectionism, and that's what it is. And so my thing is, your ego is never going to be satisfied, but you and your soul, what you truly care, your consciousness does. Are you at peace or not? And that is what I drive all of my clients, whether it's a group, a team, a business, whatever, family, is just, can we look ourselves in the mirror at night and say, I'm at peace because I'm fulfilled by who I was being, proud of what I did, what I signed up for, what I acknowledged that my responsibility is, to be more specific, and then obviously I'm satisfied with the growth, not results. I'm not getting to the results. I'm saying, in the value that I grew into more of, am I satisfied with, what was? Theoretically, if you go through the motions, you're naturally going to get better. But there's a difference between being completely focused and intensity in everything that I have in this fee sheet to being and doing will increase the ability for you to optimize your potential growth of that day. And that's what I mean by that satisfaction. So again, it's full on, but at the end of the day, it's elementary and it's easy just to go, okay, I'm embarrassed. Why am I embarrassed? Well, I chose to avoid that, or whatever it is. And of course no one's perfect, and most likely no one's ever really going to be truly at peace with themselves theoretically, or a majority of the people, let's just say, for being general. But truly, it doesn't matter if you become a millionaire, billionaire, or gazillionaire, or whatever. It's just a matter of, are you at peace with yourself at night? And most people aren't, because of just the standards that they're not giving. And then also, they're not being who they actually want to be by it's like me playing football. It's like, yeah, well, Shae, you could have made the NFL. Well, theoretically, there was a chance. There was a better percentage chance than all my teammates combined in my body to be a pro athlete as a football player than anybody else. And we had guys that got full scholarships, the whole works, from Division I, Division II, Division III. But I had probably the most upside, but I chose not to. And if I chose football when my heart was not into football, even though I was awesome and this, that, whatever, I would have regretted, I would have resented myself, I would have been just ashamed of who I was being because I wasn't being true to myself. And that's why you see and hear all these people commit suicide or be depressed when they have the whole world as their oyster. And it's based on them not being authentically congruent with themselves.
Right.
And that's the root.
Yeah, you see so many athletes, they retire. I shouldn't say so many, but there's a good percentage of athletes who say, I never enjoyed this. This is just the only thing I was ever good at. This is the only thing that I know.
Ticket. Like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I want to get out. I want to see the world. And that's what basketball was for me at times.
So let's backtrack a little bit and get back into your professional career.
Okay.
We kind of got sidetracked, which is perfect.
I'm sorry if I did.
No, you're good. That was amazing.
Okay, good. Yeah, we were all over.
Yeah. So. Like I said earlier, most people have never ever will get the chance to be a professional athlete, and you've been a professional athlete in 2 sports, and now you are helping guide other athletes on their journey.
Yeah.
So just touch a little bit more on your journey itself.
Yeah. So my whole life mission was 2 things. One, be a professional athlete, and then on a soul level was always to give back and help. And so now I'm obviously doing the helping, but I always knew that being an athlete was going to fulfill that itch, but also giving myself the best opportunity to be successful in what I want to do later in life, and then also see the world. And then because we were living in more scarcity than abundance financially, that was my logicness of being so disciplined in my development as I was growing up. So when I presented when I was in college, I was always like the 6th man, 7th man. Average we averaged like 12 minutes, 4 points, 3 rebounds. We played on a great team. We were always on ESPN. It was great experience. Theoretically, I could have played more, but my coach just didn't see it that way. He actually admitted that at my senior walkout meeting And
Your
that
exit
was
meeting.
my exit meeting. He said, Shae, and any other team in the country or any other coach in this program, you probably would have played more, but I didn't see it that way. And I appreciate your leadership and your willingness to continue being disciplined in, you know, your mission to be the best you that you can be, along with be a best teammate and obviously be a best player for me.
Did he say why you never saw it that way?
I didn't go into it because I was like in total shock. I was like, "Oh my God, you finally!"
Trying not to fight this guy.
Well, I had mixed emotions. I had one motion of like I wanted to cry and break down because it validated everything that I intuitively knew, and then also not saying that I wasn't deserving at times. There's no doubt I didn't deserve to play at all time, but I definitely deserved probably to play more. But it's okay. It's okay. But I also had the natural fight or flight. I'm gonna punch your face, and I just stared him in his eyes and I said, "Thank you," and then that basically wrapped it up. So there wasn't much of a conversation. He just had his little monologue for about a minute, and then he says, "If you want to stay in touch, let me know." And then the last time I actually had a conversation with him was saying, "Hey Shae, Digger Phelps wants to speak to you about an opportunity. You need to call him. Here it is." And that was that summer, about 4 months later, and that was the call to say, "Hey Digger, you know, what's this about? Is this about basketball?" And he's like, "No, it's not about basketball, buddy. This is about Australian rules football."
Who is Digger
Digger
Phelps?
Phelps. Oh, I'm so sorry. So Digger Phelps was the guy who did. He was the youngest college coach at Notre Dame history for basketball, men's basketball that is, excuse me, and he was a Hall of Famer over there. Then he worked at ESPN, and he always had the highlighter and the tie matching. I'm sure you've seen before.
Yes.
He's like
Yes.
He's a big deal. So for me, I was like, oh my God! First of all, my coach called me. Oh, sorry. I think he wants to go potty in a second. Sorry, but the point that I'm making is that I was having expectations of he's got a deal for me, he's got something exciting, and that wasn't the case. And he said it's for Australian rules football, and I swear to God, my heart must have stopped a couple times because I was like, "Oh, what?" So he said this is a great opportunity for you to be the first born and raised American to play at the highest level. I know you're about to go play overseas right now because at that time I actually was signed with a team in Germany, which I played at, and he said, I still think this would be a really good opportunity for you. Why don't we chat when you have your holiday break? And so I did over Christmas, and I spoke to the coach, who was actually married to an American. That was the reason why he was thinking outside the box. He was like, these Americans, they're so good. And how everyone found out about me was because Digger Phelps got the phone call from that head coach, and saying through his connection was one time the owner. So the head coach spoke to the one-time owner who knew Digger Phelps, and then Digger Phelps put the word out of characteristics that they were looking for, and then miraculously 3 random coaches mentioned my name. How random is that? And then
It's not random. That's fate.
well, exactly, it is, and it was, and that's why my the whole business is Diamond State of Mind, but my nickname was Diamond in the Rough. So there's some metaphor there. There's more to it, but the point is that why me? Why this? Why that? Obviously, it was fate. It was absolutely divine in the way it was manifesting, and that's what I always prided myself being, was following the way I articulated is God's signs, to say the least, the synchronicities of what is being attracted at the moment. And that was one of the cases that I was like, you know what, this might actually be the right fit for me to pursue. Even though basketball, I was getting better and better, and after that 1 year in Germany, I had 6 more offers. So it wasn't like I was a shabby, little scrub. I was going to get paid pretty soon, pretty well, and just continue to climb up. And honestly, between us and everyone listening, I think I had a goal for myself, is that if I'm going to play basketball by age 27, now mind you, I was 23 when I played pro my first year. By 27, I'm going to have a real chance at being in the NBA. Physically, I'll only be bigger and stronger and faster. And mind you, I jumped from the free throw line at 21. So, that as a white boy too, and this, that, whatever, and I'm only getting stronger. That year after my senior year, I squatted. I had more reps at like 500 pounds. I increased my vertical by 4 inches. My 40 time went down 0.2. I was basically running. I barefooted. I did 8 times in a row barefooted. I did 4.47 to 4.72, and a lot of them were 4.5s and 4.6s, and that was barefoot on like one of those turf, like the tar turf. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And I'm never trained to do a sprint like that, and I'm doing it barefoot. So you already can imagine that this guy who's 6'8", 230, he's running that fast and he doesn't train. I was already like, man, I'm abundant. I created this monster, this beast, and it doesn't matter what sport now. I can put my credentials and say, you can teach me. Let's play in Canada or do something if I wanted to go football. But again, my path was basketball and I was for it. But then when I got that call, I was like, man, you know what? This sport is a combination of all these different sports. It's like the perfect, combination of everything that I always played. I played all those different sports, and this could be it. And then for me to be the first, and then for this story to even manifest, that's crazy to me. So that's why I did what I did, and I took a shot at it after my first season, and it wasn't an easy process to say the least. But because I had so much belief and trust in my ability to adapt and grow my skills, but the major thing was I had faith. And I held that belief, and I held that faith, and I held that trust so much that my feeling inside, even though logically it was like chaos and stressed and so far-fetched for it to happen, I just was so gone to my vision that it was like I was on my path to brilliance, to say the least. I was unbreakable in my mindset, and I had the whole reason why I have my business is Diamond State of Mind is encompassing everything that I just said, but just basically saying, what does that brilliance look like for you in your podcast future, for example?
Right.
This is just the beginning of it, and it's only going to get better. And if you can continue to stay congruent with what needs to be done in the standards that need to be met, and you continue to put yourself out there and market and do whatever needs to be done to make this podcast, something really special, in whatever special that looks like for you, that is the only thing that's going to keep you going. Because logically and subjectively and objectively, people are just going to go, you're the most delusional guy. This doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing this? What's going on? Like, where's the results? Why aren't you getting results faster? This, that, whatever. And that's exactly what happened to me. No one believed in me. No one liked the decision. But I just said, there's a bigger picture here, and I'm seeing it, and no one else is seeing it. And that was tough on the emotional side of things, because it's like, it's not that they didn't believe that I could do it. It's just that they didn't really like the idea because it was just dumb.
Or understand why.
Well, I had 6 offers to play in Europe. Why would you give that up? I mean, I got cussed out by my agents. I had 4 different agents hustling to try to get me jobs, which they obviously did. And it was tough. I mean, I was a lone ranger. But you think about your life and what you do to create your life, and knowing that you're living your life. Just as I said, I quit football when everyone wanted me to be part of their life for this selfish reason of playing football. That was the best first moment in my life where I said, no, this is my life, and I'm honoring my life, and I'm going to do what it takes to give myself the best chance to manifesting this wish, this desire, and this dream. And essentially, I manifested it. So it was super cool. So I have that title, I have that story, but it really just brought me to the nickname of Diamond in the Rough. And that's why I help people, basically realize that just like us, just like humans, we're like diamonds too. We got flaws, we got issues, we come from tough upbringings or this, that, whatever. And even if you don't want to admit any of that, you just say when you start a new mission, you're like coal. You got to handle pressure. You got to become a diamond. Once you become a diamond, that's not enough. You got to facet, create all the sides and come with the different specific shapes and really polish up whatever it is that you're trying to be that light of. Whether you're trying to be a billionaire or a millionaire or a thousandaire or a homeless person, you're in debt to whatever that is, whatever that vision is. And so that's why I have the title of my business as Diamond State of Mind. So yeah, pretty interesting.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You like that?
I love it. I love it. I'm just trying to. It's crazy at how much this applies to the journey that I'm on right now.
Yeah, talk about that.
Dealing with really changing everything that I've ever known. We were kind of talking before the podcast started. You asked me why I'm doing this and what started this journey. And I've talked about it a few times before, but so I was working a corporate job, working for my dad. He's one of the largest produce distributors in the United States when it comes to selling pre-cut lettuce and different different types of produce, right? And he's been in the industry for 30 years. He started out as a truck driver, never graduated high school, worked his way up from a truck driver to a route salesman, and became the head director of sales for a small company in St. Louis. Was essentially recruited by a company in Oklahoma City, helped them grow from essentially a $10 million company to over $100 million company.
Wow.
In less than 15 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
talk about the American dream.
Exactly. It took a long time for me to realize how much my dad had to hustle and sacrifice. I just remember as a kid, for as long as I can remember, my dad worked 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, it was 7 days a week, nights driving trucks. He'd be up at 3 a.m. We'd be on the way to the babysitter at 4, and he'd work 5 to 7.
Yeah.
7 days a week. And then when I got a little older, he started traveling for his new job, the one in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And since I was 8 years old, he's traveled about 30 to 45 weeks out of the year.
Oh, wow.
Like he's missed 15 of my last 17 birthdays, just gone all the time. Yeah. And about, I guess it's 4.5 years ago now, he's got the opportunity with some investors to start his own company. Oh, and now they're one of the biggest produce sales brokerage firms in the country.
No kidding.
Yeah. Wow. And, he, like I was telling you, I had a kid at 18 and was just doing everything I could to try and figure out, one, where I'm going with my life and how I can help create and, afford this other life that I'm responsible for now.
Goodness.
And I was working all kinds of crazy jobs, and finally, right before I turned 21, my dad, I was about to go back to school. I was going to go to the police academy, and my dad was like, he's like, give me 6 months. He's like, I need you just to chill. Give me 6 months, and I got something for you. So I started selling produce for a company that my dad's brokerage firm kind of absorbed now, selling sliced apples.
Okay.
Strictly sliced apples to school districts.
Restaurant. Yeah, I see the logic.
Pre-cut sliced apples to restaurant chains to
canned up.
No, in bags, 6-ounce bags.
Oh my gosh.
1.5 pound bags.
Be fresh and fast.
Exactly.
Oh my god. That would have caused some logistic issues to say the least.
A nightmare.
Oh my god.
A fucking nightmare, man.
Yeah.
And especially because produce is only, I shouldn't say only, but there's 2 main hubs for where all your produce is picked up, grown, and shipped out of in the country: Salinas, California, and Yuma, Arizona. And our facility for the apples was couple hours away from Salinas, and it's a big inconvenience, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just fucking hating my life.
Yeah.
And then I finally started working for my dad full time, and I started traveling even more, kind of developing more responsibilities. And I had 8 states that I was managing, running all over. This 6-hour drive, nothing, bro.
Yeah.
There
was gonna say, I'm like, this is nothing to you now.
There was times, I'd fly into, and like I said, I've told this story a few times now, but I'd fly into New Orleans, I'd drive to Biloxi, Mississippi, go up to Jackson, Mississippi, Lafayette, Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, and then back down to New Orleans.
Oh wow!
So it was 20 hours of driving in 48 hours, maybe 50 hours, right?
Good God.
Yeah, through back road swamps.
Oh God, yeah. I can only imagine.
Two lane,
Kind of probably some weird stories. Probably can share another time.
Yeah. That is for sure. But so
coming soon at another podcast. That's so. No, we'll do podcast 13. You know,
Yeah.
dun dun dun.
right.
On next week's episode.
Yeah, seriously.
But, so and you know, it was getting to the point where there were sometimes I was traveling, 16 days out of the month.
Oh yeah.
And like I have a great relationship with my daughter's mom, so like I you know, she was working with me when I would be out of town or would let me make up the days. But being forced to miss that time with her and not do something that I love with the time that I'm missing it for, it destroyed me. Because all I could think about was how much I hated my dad being gone when I was a kid.
Yeah, of course.
You know, my mom worked nights, my dad was gone. I had an older brother who passed away when I was 12.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my sister left kind of shortly after that. So like I kind of grew up, I felt very, very alone.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't want her to feel like that. I didn't want her to, not, me not be able to be there at her soccer games and, her jiu-jitsu practices and, everything like that. Because I can probably count on, two hands how many times my dad got to see me, play football or, come to my baseball games. Like, I had the typical, hey, Dad, do you want to go play catch? Cool. We were outside for 10 minutes and his phone rings and, and now he's back inside working.
Yeah.
I'm, tossing the ball up and down by myself.
Yeah. Although that's a good way to catch the ball when you throw as high as you can.
Yeah, I can catch a pop fly like a motherfucker. Bro. Yeah.
But when you think about your dad wanted, he was it worth it to him, and hopefully to him it was, knowing that it was going to jeopardize his relationship, obviously not only with himself but with obviously you and everybody else. And if he's willing to live with himself knowing that he's not going to have those times, but as long as he saw the value that I'm going to give potentially an inheritance or the business, or I'm giving them this life and this opportunity, and that's the reason why I do what I do, then it all makes sense. But if he were to do what he's doing off of selfish reasons, and just kind of not care and just like, this is my life, and I brought you into this world, but I'm still giving you a good life, so I'm justifying it, then theoretically, he might be objectively wrong or unhealthy in that belief. But as long as for his sanity and his help and his position where he doesn't resent himself or be upset, I hope that for his sake that he can justify it in his mind to find his peace, and hopefully he articulated to you guys how much he obviously loves you and all that, but why he did what he did, just for the mere fact that we all have mommy daddy issues, and it really does affect us in many ways that more than we actually even know, until we actually break down the things that it's like, oh, that's why I do what I do, or that's why I'm triggered by that, or that's what and we all have it. I mean, I could tell hours on what my stuff, but the point that I'm making is that I just hope for his sake, and obviously you guys as a whole and a collective, and you personally, is that you guys find your peace and find the reasoning and totally accept it for what it is, even though you objectively or subjectively go, I would never do that. But under his perspective and under his willingness to be authentic to him and his competitiveness to build something and to be successful, and he lived his best life, even though we can all debate and say, I wish you could have done this more, or whatever the case is. And, it's easier said than done. And that's why everyone's on their own path. And there's no conformity. There's no process. There's no, you're supposed to be like this because you're a father, or you're supposed to be like this because you're a son, or you're a mother, or you're a daughter, or, this is how you're supposed to handle this pressure. No, there's no way to tell people how to do that. You can say this is the consequences, and this is what is naturally healthy and what is not unnaturally healthy, or not healthy, excuse me. And you have to choose whatever life you want. And essentially that's where, that mentorship and, consulting is actually going wrong, because you're essentially just projecting your beliefs on how you think. Because objectively, I'd be like, well, yeah, he's did a great job, and he's an amazing businessman, and he's created so much business and so much great life, and think about all the money potentially you're going to inherit, or the business you're going to inherit. Isn't that worth it? Or the opposite, going, what a terrible father. Why wasn't he there playing, watching you compete? Like, that's such a special moment that he'll never get back in his own life. He'll never see your first steps, or he never saw this, or he never saw that. All those father-son times. Like, so you see that duality in what I just said, and I just justified both of my beliefs. But at the end of the day, it's my belief and not his belief or yours or anybody else's. So that's where it gets kind of dicey, but that's the beauty of honoring people for what it's worth, and that's why it's awesome to have people that are different from us, even though we wish they were all the same, just for health wise.
Right.
But if he didn't teach you those valuable lessons in which helped you realize that you're willing to work your butt off, but at the same time you're not willing to compromise your relationship with your daughter, or to what extent,
right, or anything else that I love.
Correct.
That's what made me realize that the most. You know, I spent all these hours on the road and, you know, away from my daughter. And you know what? I didn't miss any major moments in her life, or, you know, really much time with her either, because like I said, her mom always made sure that I got to see her when I got back, always made sure that, you know, when she could. There was times I did have to miss, you know, a soccer practice, or you know, one day I couldn't pick her up from school, and like that was just it. I did not ever want to do that unless it was for something that I loved. Yeah. Like, you know.
But how about that value structure in which you are realigned to? Imagine if you did that every day, or every week, or every month, or every year at the very least, to restructure your values to make sure that you're aligned to it. I wish people did that more. Just in the mere fact of what you just said and the clarity that you have, you're willing to sacrifice. You're willing to say, this is worth it. I'm willing to not see you for a day to continue the growth of my podcast dream. And I'm totally cool with it. I justified it. Boom, it's fine. But if I, for example, said, I am not willing to not tuck in my daughter every single night, and if I don't do that, I just couldn't live with myself. I won't do it. Can we just do it on the phone or computer or whatever, you know? And then you'd be like, well, then okay, then you're going to sacrifice that integrity to that standard that you said that you're going to be for making your podcast. And then you have to live with that. And then you go, I resent myself, or I'm pissed off, or now I resent my daughter, and I wish I didn't have my daughter. And it's like, holy cow, like, how can you love your daughter so much but yet still resent them? You think that happens on a daily basis across the world?
Every second of every day.
Yes, exactly. And so I've had friends that are like, I love my son, but I also don't like having him because I can't
do everything that I want.
Yeah. And it sucks. And they're like, it just sucks. It's the best blessing, but it sucks. And I'm like, yeah, I think every parent would probably say that if they're being honest with themselves.
Absolutely.
You know, it sucks. It's like, why would geez, let's get a nanny. You know? But then to jeopardizing your time and special time with them. So again, there's always a duality. There's always a blessing, and there's always something where you're like, or you know, whatever. And that's why I say you have to pay the fee. And what fee is it? That is your standard that you're going to align with. Because it's not you saying, I got to do this and that. No. You have to do it. It's just to what level are you going to do it? Are you going to just work 1 hour today, or are you going to work 10? Or are you going to work, as your dad would probably average, 13, 14? Totally cool. But for some people, they're like, nah, man, I'm only an 8-hour day guy, and that's fine. And I'm totally cool with whatever results come from it. Then you know what? He owned it, and where he goes wrong is when he complains.
Yep.
And as long as he doesn't complain, then he owns his life. And that's all you can ask for. That's why you're like, how can you be so happy? It's like, well, I don't care if I only make, let's just say $32,000. I'm totally cool with making only $32,000. It's like, how does that so? You live in this small little home in this not so great neighborhood. The school structure is not the greatest in the public school system. This, that, whatever. It's like, but you know what? I'm living the life that I want. I get to watch my sport game every night. I get to have a beer. I get to have a job that doesn't have to take too much of my battery life, or my physical, or my mental, or my emotional. I get to see my family every day. I get to spend time with my friends. It's a sweet life I have. But am I abundantly amazing? No, I'm not. But I'm totally cool with it because I value all these other things that I just said more than the money.
And that's an overall win in life.
Well, it doesn't matter what you want. It's just the matter as long as you're aligned to it. That's it. Just be aligned to whatever it is that you are willing to put up with, because we all have to put up with something. I mean, we have to all pay the bills, or you don't have to just be homeless, but then you have to pay the bill of being in the cold, or begging somebody for money, or going shelter to shelter. And if you're cool with that life, which is basically paying the bills, doing the dues of what it takes to stay legitimately healthy and warm, then that's your bill. And that's your only bill as a homeless person. Think about it. If you really, assuming you live in somewhat of a colder culture,
Like here.
Yeah, exactly. There's not too many smart homeless people here, and most people are obviously down south, so it is what it is. But that's my biggest thing, is that as long as somebody is fully understanding of yes, this is what I want, cool. Now you need to make sure that it's worth it because you're aligned with your values. And if you're not aligned with your values, like for instance, like, well, Shae, man, I don't like school. It's like, well, no one likes school, but I like school because it gave me the chance to play ball in front of millions of people, or it gave me a chance to be a professional athlete. It was the necessary steps to do it. So I had a client who was really struggling. They were getting a D minus. And they had a couple projects and a test within 3 weeks of the final exam, or excuse me, the big test was the final exam. So we had only literally less than a month. And I basically, long story short, I said, what's the value in this? Why is this beneficial for you? He's like, well, it's history class. And I said, well, what is it? And it's like, we're talking about the Palestinian and Israel war. I'm like, that's actually relevant as a human being to understand that thing. But even if you don't want to do that, what is the benefit of doing this? And then he said, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do with your life? He goes, I want to be a businessman. I said, oh, really? Do you want to run your own business? He goes, yeah. And I go, interesting. Do you think there's going to be, and then he played soccer, and I said, do you have conflicts with your team? He goes, yeah. Do you have coaches that are really good with conflicts and really bad with conflicts? He goes, yeah. He goes, which one's better? Well, the one that can handle the conflicts. I'm like, oh, interesting. So if you have to make sense of this conflict, for right or wrong, on both sides, because they're all wrong and they're all right?
3 sides to every story, right?
Yeah.
His, yours,
sometimes
and the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez. Anyway, the point is with that, he saw the value. He saw the fact that this is going to be a great ability for him to break down and understand both sides, even though they're both subjectively correct. He saw value. He got more interested. Then I said, what type of learner you are. We figured out what type of learner he was. We figured out which ways and techniques are the best for that specific learning type. And then we did what he did, and sure as anything, he got a C. Well, from a D minus to a C, C plus, it was pretty good. That's a pretty, obviously he had a couple projects, and obviously that test that really helped him to get, he was lucky and fortunate that usually you don't really get that opportunity towards the end of the school year. You get all that work.
Unless you're an athlete, baby.
Unless you're an athlete, right? But to his credit, it was a high school, and it was nothing to do with about being an athlete or not. And he worked his magic, and he did what he had to do, and he increased his load, but it was based on purely playing the game of his life better by understanding what the value is and seeing how this is going to benefit him in his journey of his life, and then obviously what type of learner, and then figuring out what type of learning techniques need to be practiced within that type of brain that he has. And to his credit, he put in the work after that, but clearly to my credit, I guided him correctly. So when this was causing a lot of stress and dysfunction with himself and along with his relationships, and especially with his parents. So so I was a healer just from purely saying those 3 things. So it's pretty cool. It's really rewarding. It's worth, dealing with people's nonsense sometimes. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, I don't want people to feel pressure. I want them to feel unbreakable. And a lot of it has to do with just compartmentalizing it and making sense of things, and then just, again, finding out what value system you want and do what it takes to uphold that standard that's going to give yourself the best chance to be as optimal as you possibly can, knowing damn well you haven't reached your full potential, and you're probably not even close to 50%. So your results of being delusional and thinking you're going to be perfect or going to be a champion or this, or whatever, it's like throw that out the window, bro. It's just not going to happen. If it does, fantastic. We'll take it and enjoy it. But realistically, we have to continue to increase our value and not get caught up in the superficial worth that you have.
Shae McNamera,
Yeah.
you are a true diamond in the rough, sir.
Thanks, brother.
That is a fact.
I appreciate
this was
that.
awesome.
This is a long conversation.
Hey.
I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I appreciated everything. It was amazing. We could have talked for 5 more hours, honestly.
Absolutely.
The longest podcast ever. 11. It starts right now.
11 through 20, the longest podcast in history. Why don't
too funny, man.
why don't you leave us with some final thoughts, where people can find you?
Yeah. I'm actually redoing my website. Actually, I'm starting this website. It used to be under my name. So my mission now is not to have it about me. No disrespect to like Tony Robbins or anything like that. I want to grow my company and into having other coaches in other fields of assets to be in anybody's life. So I'm making it from Shae McNamera to diamondstateofmind.com. So I'm doing that right now, and if people want to reach out to me, they can. I'm going to have something, at least an elementary site right now on Diamond State of Mind within the week, so they can go to diamondstateofmind.com. If they want to email me, it's Shae, SHAE, at diamondstateofmind.com, and go from there. My social media on Instagram and Twitter is at Big Diamond, BIGDYMAN, and on Facebook, I'm working that all out with obviously the new branding of not being about me. I want it to be about my mission. I don't want people are going to filter me anyway. I would rather have them filter through the logo and the shield of or whatever the brand is, which is Diamond State of Mind, and having it be under helping people truly be empowered by aligning with who they truly are, and then obviously knowing what their full potential is, their brilliance, and understanding the value in which they're at, and understand that there's going to be a cause and effect to what they're worth and the true measurable results that they're getting, and hopefully they can compartmentalize, understand why, not play victim in any form or shape, but truly understand why they're getting the results, and then they get to that point where they go, I'm either still about this life or I'm not, or I need to change and adapt the way I go about my standards and how I increase my value and how I perform. And easier said than done, but I'm making it pretty easy for people to just get to it right away. And that's going to be my blessing and my art to give to the world. And so I'm really finalizing that up. And I've been doing this for about 6 years, and for the most part, I've really held my cards pretty close to the chest, to say the least. That was my strategic way, and also through my insecurities of, not really knowing what I was representing, and now I'm really ready to unleash to the world. I mean, unless you don't think I'm ready for it.
I think you're ready, my friend.
So let's do it. So this is a great opportunity for me. So I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to be part of it, and honor part of your journey. So
hey, same to you.
Perfect 10, brother.
Yeah. Right,
no, there's no such thing as perfect.
Except the 10.
Yeah, 10 is great.
All right, man. Signing off. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.